Many daughters build their identities around their mothers and around survival, around adapting to their mothers emotionally. And eventually you reach a point where you now have to start rebuilding your identity around who God actually created you to be. Who are you outside of people pleasing? Who are you outside of being hyper independence? Outside of constantly carrying other people? Outside of proving yourself to people? Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Rise and Rebuild podcast. This is your host Lydia, and I am so glad you're here today. If you're new here, welcome home. This is your safe space to break unhealthy cycles, heal what still hurts, and rebuild your life and restore the identity God created you for. Now, after our last episode, I got a question from one of you on Instagram, or was it TikTok, that I thought was so important to talk about here and respond to it on the podcast, or even attempt just to answer it here. And the question was basically, Lydia, if my mother never fully become who I need her to be, then how do I actually meet the needs she could not meet? How do I move forward if my mom may never fully become who I need her to be? How do I stop carrying those unmet needs into every relationships? How do I stop emotionally looking for my mother in everybody else? So there were a multitude of questions, but there was that particular question that kind of centered around what I'm saying. And I want to use today's episode to talk about it because many daughters have grown up with unmet emotional needs and don't even realize how much those unmet needs continue to shape their adult lives. You have the need to feel emotionally safe, to feel reassured, to feel chosen, to feel seen, to feel protected, to feel nurtured, to feel emotionally validated. And when those needs go unmet, as you grow up, you as a daughter unconsciously continue to spend your adult life trying to finally get those needs met somewhere else. And this can be through relationships, through friendships, through marriage, through work, through overachieving and overextending yourself, through constantly pleasing people, constantly needing reassurance. And sometimes without even realizing it, you become emotionally dependent on external validation because internally there are still unmet needs that were never acknowledged or healed. And that is why some people stay in unhealthy relationships for so long. That is why people over explain themselves constantly. That is why some people, women, daughters especially, fear rejection deeply. And that is why some people continue to panic when people pull away emotionally. That is why some people even decide to settle for breadcrumbs because deep down they are starving emotionally. Because unmet needs don't disappear, they follow you until you become aware of them. And I think one of the hardest realizations for many daughters is this. Sometimes you're not choosing relationships. You are choosing what is familiar, familiar emotional dynamics. You're choosing what feels emotionally familiar to your nervous system. So if inconsistency felt familiar growing up, healthy consistency can feel very unfamiliar. If all you knew was chaos, when peace comes to your life, it is very uncomfortable. If you add to earn love growing up, especially from your mother, you may unconsciously continue to keep choosing relationships where you still have to perform love. And I get asked a lot, why does the relationship with my mother affect so many other relationships in my life? It's because your mother is usually your first experience with emotional attachment, with emotional safety, with what nurturing looks like, reassurance, connection, and love. So the way you experience love and emotional connection, conflict, safety, affirmation, all those things, validation, and even consistency growing up with your mother often becomes the blueprint your nervous system now carries into adulthood. Not because you consciously choose it, but because it became emotionally familiar through your relationship and attachment to your mother. And that is why healing the mother wound matters so deeply. Because healing is not just identifying that wound, healing is learning how to stop living from that wound. So, going back to the question that was asked, before you can truly start meeting the needs your mother could not meet, you often have to grieve the fact that she may never fully become the person capable of meeting those needs for you. And I know that hurts deeply because many daughters are still emotionally hoping, still emotionally waiting, still emotionally trying, waiting for the relationship to finally become emotionally safe between them and their mothers, waiting for the emotional closeness, waiting for apology that may never come, waiting for the softness, waiting for nurturing from their mom. And sometimes these relationships can improve. Your mother can become who you need her to be. But sometimes healing happens on both sides. Sometimes it does not happen the way we hoped. And that reality can feel very heartbreaking because many daughters are not grieving their actual mother anymore. They're grieving the fantasy of who they hoped their mother would become. The mother who finally understands, the mother who emotionally validates and sees their pain, the mother who suddenly becomes emotionally available. And so maybe to answer that question, the first part of healing is allowing yourself to grieve honestly. And by grieving, I am saying finally being honest about what hurt you instead of minimizing it. You admitting what you need or you needed and did not receive it. You allowing yourself to feel that disappointment instead of constantly suppressing it and saying you're okay. You grieving the relationship you hoped for without shaming yourself for wanting that type of relationship with your mother. Because many daughters are spending years pretending they are unaffected while quietly they are carrying deep emotional grief underneath. And healing begins the moment you stop pretending that wound did not wound you and grieving honestly. And after grieving, this is where what we call reparenting begins. Reparenting is just you learning how to give yourself what your mother could not give you. The emotional safety, the reassurance, the gentleness, the validation, the nurturing, the comfort, the compassion. It is you giving yourself that which you missed. That is what we call reparenting. You start becoming intentional about giving yourself what you spend so much of your life looking for outside of yourself. You learn how to emotionally comfort yourself now instead of depending on everybody else to do it. You learn how to validate your own emotions instead of constantly questioning whether your feelings matter. You learn how to rest without feeling guilty. You learn how to stop abandoning yourself in relationships. You learn how to start choosing emotionally safe and available people. You learn how to start saying no without panicking or without abandoning yourself or without panicking that people are going to leave you. You learn how to speak up for yourself without feeling bad. And for many daughters, this can become the very first time you begin to feel emotionally safe within yourself. Because many of us were taught, I am lovable when I perform. I am lovable when I keep everybody happy. I am lovable when I overgive, when I am spending on people. But healing starts to teach you you do not have to earn love through exhaustion. You do not have to overgive. And let me say this carefully. Meeting the needs your mother could not meet does not mean isolating yourself emotionally from her. It does not mean pretending you no longer need people or her. It does not mean becoming emotionally hard or hyper independent. It just means you becoming emotionally responsible for yourself now that you're an adult. It means you're no longer expecting another human being to heal wounds they did not create. And even if it's your mom, you are not expecting them to heal it. And one of the most beautiful thing is healing is becoming the safe space you spent your whole life looking for. And then the other thing is you start rebuilding your identity and your relationships differently. Because after a while, healing stops being only about the wound. And at some point, you have to start asking yourself, okay, who am I outside of survival mode? Who am I outside of the identity I built around my mother? Who am I when I'm no longer constantly trying to earn my mother's love? Who am I when I stop overgiving just to feel chosen? Who am I when I stop shrinking myself just to keep my mother comfortable? Because many daughters build their identities around their mothers and around survival, around adapting to their mothers emotionally. And eventually you reach a point where you now have to start rebuilding your identity around who God actually created you to be, not just around who you had to become to survive your upbringing or your mother. Who are you outside of people pleasing? Who are you outside of being hyper independence? Outside of constantly carrying other people? Outside of proving yourself to people? And slowly by slowly, healing will start when you teach yourself how to live differently, how to choose healthier relationships, how to communicate differently, how to stop choosing people that reinforce your wounds, how to stop abandoning yourself, especially in romantic relationships, and how to stop building your identity around the pain, the rejection, the performance, or survival from your mother. And for some daughters, this is also where you begin allowing yourself to receive mothering differently. Not to replace your mom. No one can replace your mother. Nope. But through safe women, women who have nurtured other women, wise women, spiritually mature women, women who model emotional safety, wisdom, gentleness, healthy love, and healthy femininity in ways you may not have experienced with your mother. Adopting a mom. And sometimes that healing looks like you allowing yourself to finally receive what life did not give you earlier through these women. And I know this work is not easy because many daughters are still trying to learn emotional safety themselves while also grieving the emotional absence at the same time. But you see, healing is possible. Wholeness is possible. Peace is possible. And so you adopting a mother or finding somebody elderly to mother you the way your mother could not mother you can also be one way of you meeting the needs your mother could not meet for you. And you see, healing also starts the moment you stop asking yourself, why couldn't my mother give me what I needed? And start asking, how do I begin giving myself what I deserved all along? Because what's done is done with your mother. You cannot make her give you what she did not have. Okay? Sometimes it's just you not beating yourself down that it was your fault that your mother could not show up for you the way you needed her to show up for you. All right? So that is me attempting to answer that question. I hope that helps. And if you need more help, if you need someone to walk with you as you heal your motherhood, your girl is here. Join She Heals community. Let us walk with you. Let us support you in your journey because the relationship with your mother affects all other relationships you have in your life. I love you deeply. I do. If no one tells you today, I want you to know that a stranger on the internet loves you deeply. And I am totally believing in your healing, in you reclaiming your life and rebuilding your life and stepping into the identity that God created you for. So until next time, I want you to keep rising. I want you to keep rebuilding, and I want you to keep becoming the woman God created you to be. Will you do that for me? Good. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.